So what's your occupation now? What's your title?
My title?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
It's not a really specific title.
No, I'd say I'm I don't know. People have called me a business executive, which I think is so corporate, like bleh.
Very corporate.
I'm just more of in that. I'm a strategic advisor. That's what I do. I advise small and medium-sized companies on growth strategies, hiring strategies, fundraising, all that type of fun stuff. I find it fun.
So, what was your first job as a kid? What was your first title? What was your first job?
My first real job.
Mine, I worked at Chase Picken Home Improvement Centers here in Rochester, New York, which is, for those people out of town, was basically a Home Depot, Lowe's kind of thing, but had a little hometown flavor.
Got it.
That was my first job.
Well, he read my mind. I was going to ask what his first job was, but okay. Yeah, mine was Empire Comics.
Oh, just as a sales guy.
Empire Comics. Yeah, I was one of the crew.
Yeah,
we had a small crew there. It was Empire.
How long
Comics.
were you there, though? You did something before, though, didn't you? Work with your father?
That was actually concurrent. With that.
All right.
So
concurrent means at the same time,
right?
Yeah.
So I would.
How many points is that worth?
I would work at Empire. Exactly. I would work at Empire Comics, and then on certain summers, there was one summer in particular where I wasn't sure if I was going to be going to college, and my dad put me up on the roof.
Oh boy.
And he said, "Yeah, you don't have to go to school. You can work a trade." So I worked with the union guys. I got a union wage, which was awesome, and I worked on the roof.
That's and I don't blame your father for doing that, because he put a fire under your ass, right? You didn't want to work on that roof. You're like, no way, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. You know what? I had a second job too. My parents before I could go to school, they're like, oh, if you want to go to college, you have to earn your own money to spend while you're there. Yep. So I picked up another job delivering pizzas at Murray's Pizza here in Brighton, in Rochester, New York. Fun story. I delivered between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. So lunchtime. That's when I was the delivery guy.
Oh, okay.
And one day I had to go deliver a pizza to a place called the Travelers Motel. I don't know if you remember it. It's where CVS sits over in Brighton.
Is it by the hour and not by the day?
Exactly. Yeah. And when I went there, I knocked on the door, and the gentleman who came to the door, just a T-shirt, Mellow Yellow T-shirt. Remember, Mellow Yellow was a soft drink.
Yeah. You're really painting a great
pants,
picture.
No pants, and semi-aroused. And he had a lady friend in the bed.
Semi-aroused.
And I had a pizza pie for him, and I said, I have your pizza, and I see you have the sausage. So, right. But
wow.
That was a fun job. It was 19. It was nice.
You were 19?
Yeah.
We're doing this at Murray's.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, you do what you got to do.
Some of the perils of pizza delivery.
Yeah,
I did that for many years.
Pizza delivery is fun. It's good money.
I got to tell you, you know what? We should get a bunch of pizza delivery guys on here just as a panel, and they could share their stories.
I would love to share just that story.
We'll rate the stories, and then to play into what we do on here. We'll play into what they're saving their money for, where they want to go next, what they want to do next. Some of them might want to stay in the pizza industry. Some might not.
One day I want my own store.
Well, pizza. Anyway, Scott, do you have that song I asked you for?
I think I do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
and it is holiday time, and who knows when this will be played. But when I hear Dominic the Donkey,
oh my God,
I don't know. I just feel it fits perfectly with our guest you have today. Just the name, and I see her wincing. It's just like shaking. Do you like this? Do you like it?
It is quite funny.
Just let it play a little bit. La 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 la. Here we go.
Yep. Wait.
Here we go, Scott.
Santa's got a little friend. His name is Dominic. The cutest little donkey. You'll never see him kick. When Santa visits his paisans with Dominic, he'll be because the reindeer cannot climb the hills of Italy. Hey, jiggity jing! It's Dominic the donkey.
Okay, Scott, thank you. I mean, nothing says Christmas like an Italian Christmas donkey. Scott, yeah, right, yeah. George, who you got today?
We are very, very pleased to have Marisa Zeppieri-Caruana. You like that?
I love that.
Name.
The last
part. Marisa Zeppieri-Caruana, author of a memoir that is now on sale, which we'll talk about, founder at lupuscheck.com, and a medical journalist.
And one of my friends.
And one of Todd's friends. And soon to be one of mine. So very accomplished. Marisa, welcome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your morning to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. Normally, we like to do the whole like how it started and then go to how it's going. I think that's what the kids do these days. They do these posts like how it started, how it's going. Yeah. So trying to be on trend with the kids, except I'd like to kind of flip it and start with how it's going, because I think you have a lot of cool stuff going on. And I think the how it started is going to be really inspirational to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
You know?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you approve.
I approve.
So I think let's start with how it's going right now, and then let's get into the backstory of how you got here today. So you've got a memoir out, I know that there's a very famous actress, musician, singer, songwriter that has you in a book of hers. You've got lupuschick.com. So just give us an update. Where are you right now? And don't hold back.
Sure. Life is actually going really well, considering all things 2020.
Yep.
And so Lupus Chick has really grown. We reach about 400,000 people a month right now. We're a nonprofit here in New York. We're also an online social community, and it's not everyone, they don't specifically only have lupus. They usually have some type of chronic illness or autoimmune disease, or they're caregivers. So it's this huge community. And we just try to support and educate and motivate. My whole goal with that was really to let people know that just because you're diagnosed with something, it doesn't have to change all of the goals that you've had. They just might need to look a little different, or you might have to take a different road to get there. But it doesn't mean that everything just stops. So with Lupus Chick, through the years, I had always wanted to write my memoir, but I was a journalist for a long time, which took up a lot of my life, and it was very stressful. So when I got home, the last thing I wanted to do was write some more.
Yeah.
And with a memoir, you usually have to dig into some really uncomfortable parts of your life. So it took me a few years to really get that going. And I sold it 2 years ago, and it just came out on pre-order back in October. It's called Chronically Fabulous.
Chronically Fabulous. Okay.
Perfect.
And it is available anywhere books are sold. And it will officially print next month and ship out in May for anyone that pre-orders it. May is Lupus Awareness Month around the world. Also, I want to add that in there. And then, so what you were talking about briefly was Lady Gaga did a book called Channel Kindness that she put out in September. Amazing. And it's part of her Channel Kindness platform, which is part of her nonprofit, Born This Way. And it was really a book of 51 stories of people that inspire her, that pay it forward with kindness and don't expect anything in return. It was completely unexpected. I got an email asking if they could share the Lupus Chick story in there. And of course, without hesitation, I was like, are you kidding?
Could you imagine, you know what? I need to know a little more about this before. Could you imagine if you're one of those people like, I'm not sure if that's brand right.
Her music's a little racy.
Yeah, she's got a lot of controversy around her. Let me think about this. No, it was not like that at all. I really admire her. I like that she's very outspoken, and I'm, pretty outspoken. I come from a spunky, outspoken, lots of strong women in my Italian family. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that about her. And really, I thought, what better way to get lupus out there in a major way? Because she does have a lupus link in her family, but her platform is massive. So because the reality is, like, you ask most people today in surveys if they know what lupus is or if they've heard of it, they do not.
No.
So it all sort of worked out well.
I have to tell you, just in learning more about you, I also learned a lot about lupus. So listen, I love learning new things, and I think awareness is half the battle. Then you just got to get people to they can be aware, but then you got to get people to listen. So I appreciate that. And we'll absolutely talk more about lupuschick.com, and we'll talk it up on all the socials after the show and all that too, because it's important. So you've got a lot going on right now. So congratulations, number one, on the memoir. And congratulations, obviously, for the Lady Gaga book, and then 400,000 followers on lupuschick.com. So very accomplished, and a lot more to accomplish in the future. So what I think listeners are going to get a lot out of, though, now is, wow, here's this incredible woman who's done these things, and she's still going. let's talk a little bit. And again, there's no gotcha question, so it's as much as you want to share. Let's talk a little bit the road to get here, because a big part of the show has always been that people follow, the linear path. I'm in high school, I go to college, I get out of college, I get a job, I marry a guy, a girl, or multiple people or whatever. And then and then we get a house, we get a couple cars, and then I get famous, divorced. And then maybe, sorry. Yeah. And then, you go through all this and it's just all happy-go-lucky. And then people live in this world of, if that doesn't happen, then that means I failed and I can't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So, I got a DWI, I'm finished. I failed my test, I'm finished. I didn't get into the school I wanted, I'm finished. And part of this, especially now with COVID going on, a big part of why we do what we do is there's this white space that we're trying to fill with, actually, you can change things whenever you want and do things whatever you want. And I think you're a perfect example of that. So I'd love to, as I said, as deep as you want to go on certain topics, I'd love to talk more about, how you got to this fabulous state that you're in, because it wasn't easy. And I know it wasn't.
It definitely wasn't easy, and it's still not easy. I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that I really want people to understand, which is, what we really try to portray on our social media. I know that they're just hearing audio right now, but obviously looking at me, you would not think that there's anything going on, that I'm not sick.
Yeah, not at all. No.
Right. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions with autoimmune disease. They're often invisible diseases, even though there can be a lot of disabilities like within that space. But if they're not necessarily on the outside, I think people automatically sort of brush it off, or they maybe don't believe you, which is something that a lot of patients struggle with. So, even today with all these amazing things, my life's really been difficult since I was little. But I think that surviving all of the things that I have, it has really primed me to be in the position I'm in. And it's easier to sort of take those punches when they come.
So when did you discover, I shouldn't say discover, when were you diagnosed with lupus? Because, some people go through life being dyslexic and don't figure it out until later in life. And obviously that's nowhere near as dangerous or serious. You can't even compare it. But you know what I mean? So like you were obviously going through, you were obviously feeling tired. You didn't have as much energy. I know with lupus, I know sometimes you get rashes. So you had this stuff going on. When did somebody finally go, oh, here's what you have. And it was like, oh, here's what we can do.
Yeah. So actually, when I was little, right when I was born, I started having all these autoimmune issues. I had really severe allergies. I couldn't have breast milk. I couldn't have soy milk. They didn't know what to give me. And then all of a sudden, I have asthma. And so that's all in this autoimmune family. So it sort of started right when I showed up here on Earth. It was hey, guess what, Mom? I'm going to be a hot mess. You have to take care of me. Good luck.
Jeez.
So then when I was 8, I really started to get strange symptoms of really severe fatigue. I couldn't go. We lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time. We moved down from New York City. So the sun was obviously very strong. And I was getting these strange rashes when I'd come inside. I was getting these weird fevers. I always needed a nap. I was the weird kid at school. I was what's wrong with this girl? And then that just got worse and worse through my teenage years. And really, this is going back in the 80s, the doctors were more oh, she's just a fragile child. And, she has a weak immune system. And nothing was ever really looked further into. And which is a shame, but it's very common with lupus and other autoimmune diseases. So it wasn't actually until my 20s when I was in college to be a nurse, and I was almost finished. And I was crossing a street one evening in Fort Lauderdale, and I actually got hit by a drunk driver in a pickup. So that was really the moment that changed it all.
Yeah. Okay. So you're dealing with this. And all right, let's go a little as deep as you want here. So that I can only imagine the recovery, and not just a physical recovery, there had to be some PTSD in there. Come on.
There was. Okay. So actually I was diagnosed with PTSD, which I really did not understand at the age of 23 years old. But I spent, in total, about a year in recovery between the hospital and then rehab. because I had so many internal injuries. But, it was like in that second, everything ended. So like life as I'd known it up to that point, that was never going to happen again. I wasn't able to return back to school. And again, I was in recovery. Thank God I had my mom and my grandmother who took care of me when I came home from the rehab. And, basically all my financials were gone because I had so many medical bills and things.
Oh, God.
And I couldn't work. So just, life changed. So not only did I have these injuries all of a sudden, but then I started to get really sick while I was in the hospital. And, in a way it was a blessing because I had all these incredible doctors around me.
Right.
But it was like, okay, she has this crazy rash and she has this weird fever, but we can't find an infection. And she's got these weird sores. And then I wound up having this mini stroke in the hospital.
Mini stroke. Okay.
So mini strokes are common with lupus if you have like blood involvement. You can have different blood like involvement in the way. Like for me, it's mini strokes or blood clots. I have a brain aneurysm right now from the lupus. These are all things that, right now in my head as I'm talking to you.
All right.
Okay.
So, doctors are like, is this because she got hit by a truck or is this something else? And so they had all these specialists come in, and one of them was rheumatology and one was infectious disease. And they tested me for everything known to man. And I wound up getting this diagnosis of lupus. And I just remember looking at her and thinking, like, I have no idea what this is or what you're talking about right now, but give me a pill and let's get on our way.
Yeah. I got things to do.
I have a lot of stuff to take care of. And she just looked at me and she said, oh, there's no cure, but, we can try to manage you with some chemos and some anti-malarials. And I was like, I'm going to get a hard pass on all of this.
Yeah. Wow.
So you said you had a stroke. Have you had more than one since that point? And here's my question. When people hear stroke, they think, oh, it affected the fine motor skills. Did that do anything to your fine motor skills?
So I've had 5 mini strokes, which could also be called a TIA. So there's no residuals for me on those.
All right.
They all clear up, I'd say within a matter of days, like any symptoms that I was having. The thing is to try to pinpoint if it's a sign of another larger stroke coming down the pipes, because that can happen. With a mini stroke is sometimes like your signal that there's something else going on. So, and then they just give you different medications to prevent a stroke from happening later on down the road. But for me, lupus tends to affect certain organs in everyone's different, but it's usually the brain, the blood, the lungs, the heart, or the kidney, or your skin. So, well, I've never had kidney involvement, and I know a lot of people that have, and they typically, wind up on dialysis or get a kidney transplant. Mine's always been my brain and my blood and my heart.
Wow.
So, it's different. Again, it's different for everyone. But there was actually, I think the main symptom or sign during that hospital visit that really sort of pinpointed them in the direction of lupus.
Okay. So this is at 23. So previous to 23, you were going to do the nursing route. Did your medical issues during that time, even though you didn't know what it was, did that inform your decision to go into nursing and the medical field, or no?
Yeah, I actually wanted to be in the medical field since I was a little kid. I think because I was always around doctors.
Yeah.
And I loved them, I felt like these were the people that were helping me. So I did my undergrad in chemistry, and I actually wanted to go to medical school, but I was really sick, and I thought there is no way I can do 4 years, but I could do another year and a half, after I've already done all this undergrad.
For sure.
And so that was my plan.
That was your plan. So 23, the accident happens. You go through this rehab. You have all this PTSD. The lupus diagnosis comes out. How does one, and this is where I think we want to go as deep as we can here. How does one because here there's people talk about reimagining. And in this case, I don't think you can reimagine because you have some fixed issues, that some incurable issues, they're fixed. So instead of reimagining the rest of your life, how did you reframe it? because you definitely had your wits about you, even though there was so much going on and so many people are like, oh, I'm so stressed. I mean, I have to admire you. You reframed your goals, and I'd love to know what went into that and when did you start thinking about reframing your goals, because school wasn't an option anymore and you're like, okay, what am I going to do next? You had to totally reframe the future.
I did. And, I had to really think about, my doctors are like, listen, nursing is not going to be the right career for you. I mean, first of all, I couldn't even get out of bed. I was like bed and hospital bound for the first couple of years. But, it's like I had a nurse that would come to the house and take care of me. So there's no way I was going to go work a 13, 14-hour shift, take care of other people.
Yeah.
So that was a very harsh reality. But I think it's really important to be honest about the fact that I didn't have that great frame of mind at 23. I was actually really mad. My year of 23 was just, if you could describe me in one word, it was angry.
Yeah.
It was, why did I get hit by a truck? Are you kidding me? Like, now I have all this stuff that's wrong. What is this weird disease that I have? And, really just this thought of, hasn't my life been really difficult up until this moment? Isn't this sort of like a lifetime of just stuff happening at so young, right? So really the next couple of years were learning what my new life was about, because you really do have this new normal when you're diagnosed with an illness that has no cure and is really so up and down, and you just never know what every day is going to bring. But I really got to learn about, what lupus is, how it affects me, what the medicine treatments are like, and which one would work, best for me. That was also sort of like a touch and go, doctors trying to figure out which would help me the most. And being in the hospital a lot, and I had a lot of flare-ups. So lupus is a disease of flares and remissions of when it's very active, and then it's sort of, with medicines and rest, and hopefully the goal is to get it into sort of a quiet season. But I had so many flares in such a short amount of years that then I wound up in a wheelchair. And that was really hard for me because I'm extremely independent. So here I am sort of getting my independence back. I go to rehab. I have to learn how to walk again, and I go from wheelchair in rehab to walker to walking. And then a couple of years later, boom, I'm back in the wheelchair now. But this is now from the lupus.
Oh, boy.
And so I would say up until maybe 28, things were not great.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm gonna live with my mom forever. She's gonna take care of me. And thank God I had an amazing grandma who also lived with us.
Yep.
And we loved to cook, and she loved to feed me a lot. And but that's when things sort of changed.
Okay.
I think,
so 28.
I think my faith really came into play pretty hard at that point.
Sure.
Because I don't think that you almost die without ever questioning, how in the world am I still alive? Even the trauma surgeon actually came up when I was in my regular hospital room, and he sat down on the bed and he said, I have to tell you, you have someone watching over you, because with your injuries, you should have needed immediate surgery when you came into the hospital that night. And then he was telling me that most pedestrians that get hit don't typically make it alive to the hospital. I think it's like 70% or some wild statistic. And even though I had a lot of internal injuries, my blood clotted faster than he had ever seen. So even though I had broken ribs and they split my liver into like 5 pieces, he never had to go in and do surgery. He said that it clotted within a matter of hours. He said he'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So I think you sort of go through this process of, wow, I can't believe I'm not dead. So why am I not dead? What am I supposed to do with all of this now, right?
That's right.
And so I started to, obviously I was spending a lot of time at home and in bed or in the hospital. So I started to write, which is something that I always loved to do when I was younger. And, that just sort of took on a life of its own. And I remember being in bed and just praying and just saying, if this is if this will be the rest of my life and I will never get out of this bed, then let me be able to do something so that I feel like I have purpose. And I feel like it really started to come out in my writing.
That's amazing. Purpose. And I think, legacy. You seem like a legacy person. It doesn't have to be, memorials about you. You just want to leave something behind that people can take forward.
Definitely.
I love it.
Hey, Marisa, and let's go back to that accident. And it just blows me away that you were hit by a truck and you survived. Was that person who was driving the truck, did they stop or did they keep going? Was that person brought to justice?
So that person actually did keep going. They did not stop. They went through a fence after they hit me, and they were found about 20 minutes later. They were actually found at a gas station buying more alcohol.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but that person was drinking while they were driving, and they were also under the influence of drugs. So they wound up going to prison.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I just was hoping there was some finality to that end of the story.
Was.
Good. I'm glad they got him.
So 28 things are changing. So you're writing. I love that you brought up purpose. That's a big thing of mine. Purpose and / leaving a legacy. So you're writing. So how did that writing then? So the writing obviously leads into the memoirs. And so let's talk about Lupus Chick a little bit. Did that get born out of your time in bed and while you're writing and journaling? Did those thoughts enter your mind? Because even though you had all this stuff happening with you, you still had this entrepreneurial spirit about you, clearly. So I'd love to dive a little deeper on that.
It's definitely something I've always had. And so I spent a lot of time in prayer, to be honest with you. And it was really more of a, hey, God, if you want to show me like what I'm supposed to be doing, because you made me this way and I'm like a super type A. So I need to like do something with all this energy. And I'll never forget two really incredible things happened. And I talk about it in my memoir. One was I had sent some friends of mine some stuff that I was writing, and an editor of one of the newspapers in South Florida called me. I didn't know who she was. And she said, oh, a friend of a friend sent me some of your stuff. And I was wondering if you'd be interested in maybe being on our writing team. And boom, like this world of journalism just literally fell in my lap, something I never, went to school for. And the short story of that is I wound up writing, and I wind up becoming their senior writer over many years, and then one of their editors. And so that grew. And then from there, I went on to, write for Healthline and Huffington Post and Al Jazeera, and then worked for Gannett when I moved up to New York.
Incredible.
So it turned into this amazing career that I never expected. But while that was starting, I'll never forget, I had I just had a lot of quiet time at one point, and I was really wondering. And I thought, if I'm in the city of millions of people and I don't know anyone, like, how do other people feel? Like, they have to feel completely alone, because for the majority of us that have chronic illness, we're very isolated, which a lot of people in 2020 got a close-up view of what that is like. And it is very difficult. So I remember going to sleep, and for me, I really feel like God always speaks to me in my dreams. And I had this incredibly vivid dream of starting this online community. And this is like right when blogs were starting to come out. I remember like Blogger.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, like MySpace and all these different places, right? And this whole thing just sort of got downloaded into my head of Lupus Chick. And it was supposed to be very specific. It had to be educational and motivating and inspiring and positive. And so I woke up the next day and I was like gung-ho. And I just said, okay, I have no idea how to build a website or a blog, but I'm going to do it. And I did. And it really just started out as a blog and just like a journey. And, just a couple people here and there, like commenting. They didn't live in the United States, some of them, but it was a way for us all to connect. And it just grew and grew into like something just incredible. And we've been able to do so many things with Lupus Chick. We give out college scholarships now. We're about to give out our 11th one in the spring.
Wow.
And I've been able to speak all across the United States. And like I said, we reach, almost 500,000 people a month now from this little like hideous
That's
thing
amazing.
that I built.
That's
so great.
huge. So as you were building, this started with the blog, you built the connections. Did you partner with somebody to get this finally started, or was Lupus Chick just all your own thing? Like, I'll just put up a small website now and just grow it from there.
Yeah, all my own. I learned as I went.
I love it.
I built it myself, and it was not super attractive those first few times. But if you remember back in the day, like websites were sort of boring for a long time. Like you only had so many options, Today, we just have so many amazing features that we have available to us. And I think working as a journalist and learning like the video and the audio and the different softwares, like it's like it was all supposed to go together because all of those things helped me build Lupus Chick.
Right. So with that, and you might have already answered this, but I just want to just dive in on this one more time for listeners, because a lot of people, especially now, a lot of people that I coach, they perfection is their enemy. They don't want to do it unless it's going to be just right. And here you are, you're like, we're going to start in one place and we're going to end up in another, but we just got to get started. So did perfection ever enter, or because of what you had gone through, you're like, this has already been so imperfect, let's just do it? Because a lot of people won't even start a blog. They want to start with the website. You could argue that with this podcast, I wanted to start like, no, it's got to be no. Todd threw together a logo. We had a quick idea, and we're like, we're just going to start the podcast and see what goes from there.
Run with it. Yep.
So how did you overcome, was perfectionism ever the enemy, or did you just ignore it? Was there anything to overcome, or did you just start doing it?
Yeah, so my family calls me like the bull. I just get right in there. I don't believe in perfection. I think it's BS. I think it's this thing that we create in our minds, or this illusion that we have online. It doesn't exist. If you're waiting for that perfect moment, you can wait for it. You are literally going to wait for it till the day you die, because it is never going to appear.
I love that you said that. It's
an
illusion.
Too. And you know what? And she's saying it too, but she also, on her social media, she'll write the same things in the same vein that she's saying right now to you. She believes what she's saying too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you are going to hit one S show after the next, as I like to describe on social media.
Shit.
And yes, the timing will never be perfect. And the reality is, like, if that is your true north, if that is what you feel you are supposed to be doing, and that's your why, and that's your purpose, then you can let stuff stand in your way. But every week or every month or every year is going to be something else that stands in your way. Yep. And guess what? You're never going to get it finished. And you're always going to feel like that discontent feeling. I don't like feeling like that. So I'm going to try 100 things and figure out what works, because when I have a vision, like I have to bring it out into fruition in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there, it sounds like you know, and not many people do this. Some of our other guests have said this, and they do this. You just throw yourself into the change. You just have to throw yourself into it. And
you'll fail.
Of course.
And things won't work, like you'll find things won't work, or you'll change platforms and you'll realize, I'm not so good at podcasts, but I'm really good at video and YouTube, or I'm really good at, making these quick little videos on social media, and people seem to resonate with them. So you got to try everything and find out what you're good at. Right.
No, I agree. It's trial and error. And the thing, I think so many people, even now with like being stuck in their homes, they're still afraid of the error. Like, oh, I'll trial it, but I'm only going to trial it if I'm going to be successful. It's that growth mindset, right? Except it's the anti-growth mindset. I won't do it unless I know I'm going to be successful. That's the only way I'm going to do it.
And the reality is, like, whether you're starting a social media community, a social community, or you're starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, like, guess what? You better give yourself a good year or two.
Oh, yeah.
And know, like, this whole time, this whole season that I'm giving myself, this is building. Like, you have to invest that time. You don't just wake up. It's very, it's the outlier. It's very rare that something takes off super fast and you become like this overnight success.
Right. And I would argue that, slow and I mean, it's been said for so many decades. Slow and steady wins the race. But I would argue you don't want that hype so fast, because sometimes when that hype happens so fast, that then you take on even more responsibility
and you get wrapped up in it.
And then all of a sudden you lose the seriousness of who you are. You don't, you actually, I should rephrase that. You take yourself too seriously and then you lose the plot. And I've always said that some of the greatest leaders, when they achieve a certain success, all of a sudden it's, oh, we're not flying commercial, we're flying private. Oh, we're not going here. Let's go to a more expensive restaurant. I don't want to. I'm only one person, but 10,000 square feet. I need 20,000 square feet. And then you start like building this thing in your head. You take yourself so seriously and you lose the plot. You lose contact with your employees. You lose contact with the customers that you're supposed to be serving. You lose friendships just because all of a sudden it's all about you. And it's about this, inferior, superior complex that you're battling with inside. And instead of just building something and growing something like you have, and you're still, yes, you're an author, you're an accomplished journalist. You've got this great nonprofit that you started that's only going to get bigger. You've got your book coming out. There will probably be more books after that. You could probably write a book on nonprofits and talk about a book about, you could, I'd love to jam on it with you at some point if you ever want to do it. Just a book about how to build legacy in an authentic way, because that's what you're doing. I don't mean to put that on you, but.
Oh, no, I agree with everything you just said. And I think, if you do expect success overnight, or for some reason it does happen to you, I think you miss out on a lot of character building and finding out what your strengths are and really learning like what hard work and failure feels like, because you have to be able to sit with those in order for when the amazing things come, you recognize them and you remind yourself the next time you fail, this is okay. Okay, I've been in pretty bad situations like this, so let me figure out a workaround. Let me figure out how I'm going to get around this and actually create what I want. Nothing came easy for me, and I had to learn everything on my own, all the programs, how to build websites, how to do social media marketing. I didn't go to college for it. I didn't know anyone that could help me. I'd read stuff online, I would research, and then it was all trial and error. And again, you find what works, you find what doesn't, but you also find out a lot about yourself and what you're good at. And, you can have people tell you oh, you're a great speaker, or, you can really just bring an audience in. And those are great things to start with, I think, if you're curious, well, really, what am I really good at? But once you start trying things, I always tell writers, because sometimes I teach writers, writing classes, and they say well, how do I find my voice? Well, you know what? Take your short story or take your page that you wrote and write it in 3 or 4 different ways. Write it really serious. Write it with a sense of humor. Write it from first person. Write it from third person. Which one comes most naturally to you? Todd, I'm sure he can write some hilarious stuff online.
Yep.
But some people, they're more literary, they're more serious, and that's what comes naturally to them. So don't try to be someone else or be what you think is popular. If you're actually yourself and you're authentic, and people see, I always tell people know, trust. People get to know you, especially online today, or whether it's podcasts or a video cast, they get to know you and they see that you're authentic, you're real, you're honest, and they start to like you. Then they're going to start to trust what you actually have to say, because they know that you're not doing all of this for show. You're not doing this to just get popular and be successful and make money.
Exactly. I mean, please, Scott's bankrupting us, every week. So it is what it is.
Son of a bitch. You know what, George? Wow. And I just want to chime in here. I met, and I know the exact date, I met Marisa on March 14th of this year. Right. Probably a couple days before the world caught on fire. And I met her that day. We haven't hung out, but I feel like I've known her forever, because she is a real person just by her social media. And we've talked on the phone a couple times, but that doesn't build a friendship. But she is so real. And it's funny, too, because 2 of our guests that we've had Marisa now. Yep. And she came up to me after a show I did on March 14th at a winery in Hilton, New York, and just said hello and how much she enjoyed my show. and it sparked a friendship. And I just feel like, it proves that, people walk into your life for reasons.
Sure.
And I find her inspiring. I think her story's absolutely amazing. And it was also Daphne Pariser who came up to me after a show, one of my shows, and told me how much she liked it. And, another inspiring, intelligent person who went out and just threw themselves into what they do. And it's just, I don't know, I just wanted to chime in and say that these people are so inspiring, especially Marisa.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And Marisa, kind of playing off that, we talked about where you are now. So now let's talk, I don't like to waste a lot of energy on the future because I'm such a present person. And I get the sense that you are as well. You just take things kind of a day at a time. But knowing that you've got later on in 2021, your book coming out, you're going to be growing Lupus Chick. You're still an accomplished journalist. Have you thought about the next year, some things maybe you'd like to do, like in that mind of yours? I'm sure you get lots of thoughts about things. Have you thought about what you'd like to do? And is there anything you want to kind of share on that?
Yeah, I have a lot of plans. So I've sort of laid journalism down at this point. I do a little freelance here and there.
Okay.
But I am talking to my publishers about other book ideas.
Great.
And, I've been doing a lot with my art. So I do a lot of painting. I do a lot of drawing. I've been teaching some art classes. Like, I'm just very creative, and I feel like I need to have my hand in a couple of different pots at one time. Lupus Chick is definitely growing. I'm doing more speaking, which I'm sure will happen more with the book. But also, just, I love teaching people. I think that's, I definitely have a heart to teach. So I love to teach people, whether it's, starting your own business or starting your own social community. If you're a patient advocate, I love teaching patient advocates and other people out there that are like, okay, this is my story and these are all the things I found. How can I go and help other people? But where do I get started? And the thing is, in the health realm, a lot of if you look at a lot of surveys and research and studies, a lot of people that are online that are just diagnosed, they tend to actually move away from these larger nonprofits and these medical websites and the government sites, and they tend to hit more on the patient advocates because we're letting this is what a full day looks like. These are what our medications are. And, usually they're starting the same medications, and these are the issues that I've had, or this is what happens when I'm in a flare and I can't, get myself into the bathtub. These are the mobility devices I use. You're only going to learn that from another person that's actually been through it.
Yep.
So I think it's really important that people understand, so maybe, patient advocacy isn't your world, but maybe you're a caregiver to a child that has autism, or just something, and you can actually share that story with other people. I love to help people get started in that journey. So
and that's what great leaders do. Great leaders know that you can't know everything. However, you can. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Great leaders know that you can't know everything on your own, but you can be on a journey to know almost everything if you collaborate and talk and work with other people. That's how you do it. That's how people grow and develop. That's the only way to do it, is by listening and talking to other people. Even today, am I an expert now? No, but I know a hell of a lot more after listening to after reading some of your articles and listening to you on other shows, and even on this show today. I know a hell of a lot more and feel a lot more knowledgeable and confident in speaking to somebody or helping somebody out.
Of course. Yeah.
Which is great. This has just been fantastic. I usually end the show where I ask, I'll ask the guest, if somebody else was going to write your story, would you want any rewrites done? But I after listening to you and talking to Todd,
I know the answer.
You don't want any rewrites. You don't need any rewrites. You're so confident.
Any regrets?
You've used this unbelievable trauma that you've gone through. I think this trauma has fueled you. And almost, even though it's awful and it's something that you're still living with, this trauma has fueled you to leave a legacy, be a purpose, not a function, and to continue. It's fueled, the trauma's fueled your growth. And that's because you took this energy, even though it wasn't great energy, you used it to your advantage. You used that momentum and you're like, all right, I'm going to reframe it and turn it into something else. So I don't think you'd rewrite anything. Is that wrong? Am I wrong? Or
I can't say I would rewrite anything at this point. Something I love for people to see, and it took me actually a long time to write it because I wanted to write it in a certain way, is on Lupus Chick. I have a page where I share some of my story. It's on the Meet Marisa page. And I talk about in there how I am an overcomer. Like I am, and I always will be. We're all going to have valleys. We're all going to have these mountains, and we're going to go through these over and over again in life, right? It's never going to just be this flat journey that we're walking. And there's a quote, and I don't remember it exactly, but it's by an author named Sherry Mandel. And she basically says, like, if you see a pain point in the community that you're in and no one's like talking about it, maybe you're the one that's actually supposed to start that fire.
Yeah.
So that's what I always just love to tell people. Like, I am one person. I had no idea what I was doing. I just put myself out there. 12 years later, our story is in, one of the most famous women's books now, and it's out incredible. There. And no one could have told me that any of that stuff was ever going to happen. But I think it's just really important to know what one person can do. And
that wasn't your goal. Your goal was just, it was like you were going through almost like the self-healing, like, okay, I'm in this situation. What can I do? So I'm going to start writing. And because you did what you felt in your heart and your head, all these other great things happen. And I think a lot of people put the goal first. Like these businesses are always like, oh, you got to have a goal, or, no, just start with a simple plan. The goal will kind of.
I think it's more important to have a passion, because when you're doing it, your goal is actually going to change. My goal with Lupus Chick has changed. Every 2 or 3 years, like I have to sit down and decide, okay, where are we going next? It's never going to be like this static goal.
I agree. Whenever I hear people like, well, I got to set the goal first because then I have something to work towards. I'm like, especially today. I mean, if you had a goal in the 70s, maybe even the early 80s, okay, I can understand that. But now, come on, you can't have a goal. It's day by day. Things change. I mean, it's literally like, this is what I love to do. And think about it. If everybody with a goal is struggling with COVID, people with a passion are like, okay, how do I take this passion? And you look at some of the businesses and some of the leaders that are still thriving today. They're like, okay, I still love what I do, but now we've got to do, we have mutual friends, Todd and I, that are in the restaurant business. Mm-hmm. That's what they love to do. They love to service customers. They love creating good food and having great experiences. Okay, can't have them in my restaurant. So now how do I make the takeout experience better? Yeah. They didn't just like stop and do that. So I really appreciate you saying that. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate you being on. I would love to have you back on, especially as we get closer to the book, or if something major happens, just reach out to us beforehand, whether it's with Lupus Chick or another exciting project you're on, because these stories have to get out. This is a story that I know our listeners and our growing base of listeners is really going to appreciate. So thank you so much for your time, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
I
Marisa.
feel fortunate to have met you today, and I hope we get to stay in touch.
Thank you. Well, I love being on. I appreciate it. And yes, I would absolutely love to be back on in the next few months.
Great. That's what we're going to do. And we might even, we're toying with the idea of a panel, and we're going to do a women's panel. So I think it'd be great to have you on.
That would be awesome.
I love it. Thank you so much, Marisa. We've been talking with Marisa Zeppieri-Caruana. She's an accomplished author. Her book is coming out in June of 2021, but you can start pre-ordering in January. Is that it, Marisa? Sorry.
It's actually on pre-order now.
Oh, it's on pre-order now. And the title again?
Yeah. Chronically Fabulous.
Chronically
and she is
fabulous. Yes, she is chronically fabulous. She's also the founder of lupuschick.com. That is lupuschick.com. So please go there. You can read more about her.
And she's my friend.
And you can I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay.
It's not about you.
All right.
Gosh, ego.
Keep going.
And you can certainly donate, I'm certain, right there on lupuschick.com, and learn how to become more involved. So I encourage you to do that. And
she's my friend.
She
thought I was funny.
And she's Todd's friend.
I give anybody credit that comes up and says they thought I was funny. You're instantly my friend if you come up after a show. Yeah, you're instantly
and I can call you to say goodnight.
Yeah, she calls me twice a month just to say goodnight.
That's nice.
Yeah. It's like a warm glass of milk. Just puts me right to sleep.
I think Todd Probably his passion. He probably not only writing comedy. You should try writing it in erotica. We'll call it Todd erotica.
He could be the next 50 Shades.
Oh, Todd erotica. Are you
Todica?
Wait, are you pouring me a glass? Are you pouring me a glass of milk? Is it soy? Is it almond?
Is it cashew? Creamy cashew milk?
Full fat, 2%. Oh, half full. Now, are you going to do that with Oreos or chocolate chips? Okay.
Am I blushing over here?
There's a spin-off
Marisa, sorry, we just like to
Yeah,
have
right,
fun.
there's a
but
spin-off.
Todica. It's I love it. Anyway, thank you so much, Marisa. We really appreciate it. Have a great holiday, and we will talk to you soon. And we will be in touch. I promise you that.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Another great show.
It was. And, I'm looking at her Instagram right here, and she's promoting the Chronically Fabulous book, and she has a quote here from it, and she says, comparing ourselves to people who have a life journey completely different from ours is a pattern of thinking that quickly takes away from our own unique destiny. And I think that's totally true. And
it is. First of all,
comedy.
What's her Instagram handle so we can give
Lupus Chick Official.
Lupus Chick Official. So
on
please
Instagram.
Check that out. And lupuschick.com. You got to check it out. It's kind of similar to what Elena Alderman said a few episodes earlier when she talked about, I was talking about competition and the music business. And she's like, you know what? You got to pay attention to that. But honestly, you got to play your own game.
Yeah.
You can't look and see what everybody else is
comparing.
doing.
You just defeat yourself.
That's right.
And it was the same in comedy and probably with you.
Yeah.
You compare yourself to others. Like I did that a lot. I'm like, oh, why is he getting these gigs? Why aren't I getting those gigs?
Yep.
Why? Just have fun and enjoy it. That's
right.
what I do.
And then you'll get gigs, and you'll get gigs that other people won't.
Right.
And you'll meet people that other people haven't, and you'll do parties or get involved with a business that other people aren't.
Right.
Because not only you're a comedian, you're involved with a successful business.
With a successful business, and I work with cool people like Mark and Vinny, and it's fantastic.
There you go. Yeah. It's great. So what I loved about this, key takeaways, because we always like to do this for the listeners, take what you want, but Marisa really, she embodies what it means to have a purpose. Mm-hmm. She went through so much trauma, and she used the energy of that trauma and just kind of reframed what the rest of her life was going to be like.
Yeah, she did.
And she's creating legacy. She has a purpose. She was a journalist, and she even said, now I'm going to leave the journalism behind. I want to write another book. I want to take Lucas.com to Lupus, Lucas
is a movie from the 80s.
That's right.
Yeah.
LupusChick.com, make it even bigger. And then she's got other things she wants to, accomplish. So, when I think about that, when I think about her, quote unquote, she's the bull, perfection truly is an illusion. And, if you keep focusing on perfection, you're just never going to get ahead.
Defeat yourself. Yeah.
And look at her. You could argue she was defeated at 23, and then by 28, she's reframed her life, and look where she is today.
She claims her life started then.
Yep.
That, after being hit by that truck, which I probably would have just wanted to give up.
That's why I wanted to frame it as how it's going. Wow, it's going well, but boy, how it started.
Yeah.
You never would have guessed that the how it's going would have been there. So,
and she's my friend. Say goodbye, George.
It's a great example, everybody. Yes, goodbye, George.